and really embody that true essence of who you really are as opposed to how you've been programmed to be. You see, there is this really bigger essence, bigger self. Use whatever word works for you. I'll use the word core being when I talk about the true self versus the false self. Let's get started. So this is a Zen bowl. I'm going to ask you all to be as open as a Zen bowl, meaning I'm going to be providing you with new information and new concepts and new ideas. And I'd love for you to consider them and really think about how they might work in your private practice and how it might improve your life. So this is a little bit about me. I'm kind of a consciousness nerd. I've studied just about everything. I was a teacher at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I have studied body-centered psychotherapy of many, many different types, as well as I'm into the brain science of it. I'm really interested in understanding not only the blueprint of subtle energy, but also the biology of how that energy works through the body, how it influences and embodies a spiritual path, really. How do you embody the bigger essence of who you are? I call it the core being or true self, and heal that negative programming, whether that negative programming is energetic or whether that negative programming has a past life origin, and has a biological origin. I used to say, change your mind, change your world. But it's really about how the mind can work with the body and the energy system and that spiritual essence of who you really are in order to change that false self, embody the true self. I say pain is that energetic portal to incarnate more of your wholeness. And so in that journey to discover that, I've traveled around the world. I started out as a Washington, D.C. lobbyist for underprivileged kids and low-income people to try and help them become empowered economically and in terms of their own life. And I lobbied on all sorts of welfare programs, job training programs, and so I was working on the micro. And then I lived in Asia for many years and studied there and traveled around the world. And I wanted to understand how to work on the micro. And so in the work that I'm presenting today, it brings forward all the lessons I've learned, excuse me, from traveling in Asia, from studying in the clinical setting, as well as I was at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing and did their teacher training program. So I bring a lot of different angles to it. I was even a massage therapist for 10 years. So anyways, let's get started. So here's a picture that a student gave me when I first started teaching. And she said, she gave it to me, but she drew it and created it and channeled it, as you may, before I had even met her. She just knew she was going to give it to her next teacher. And here, just to show you the magic of the world. So you notice she's in that dark, dark shadow, but there's this light coming in. So when we're working with the true self and the false self, you know, you can think of the false self, the negative programming around the false self, be it energetic, be it somatic, be it biological, as that darker areas. And then the light is the essence of who we really are and how we can use the negative programming of the false self to really transform it. And we'll talk more about that in a bit, and bring in the light of who we really are. So it is a magical world that we live in. And here's the picture of me as a kid. So she hadn't met me, she hadn't seen that picture, but you notice the shoes, the socks, the dress, even my little clips in the hair are so identical. We're all connected. And as we find not only the connection between us and among us that can resonate at a conscious collective higher frequency of who we really are, we then can help also heal our false self and embody our true self. Okay, and there you go. I love that picture. I'm big into horses and animals helping me in my private practice, and I just really think that embodies the essence. We have that golden shadow of our bigger essence, and we can claim it here in the physical body, in our energy system, in the rewiring of our brain, and in our self-identification. So what will we cover? We'll cover the energetic transformation of the false self to the true self or core being. And the subtle differences between what I call transformation of paying the power of that energetic template to the embodiment within this organic structure of the brain and body systems is a little bit different from what people consider process work, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. We'll also cover how the false self and its emotional pain can be that portal for spiritual awakening or awakening the true self or the bigger essence. You know, again, I don't want to get caught in languages, so find the word that works for you. Also discuss integrative. I'll also discuss integrative energetic techniques somatically through the body and mindfulnessly based. And it's structured on 5 skills, 5 steps, and 5 spiritual laws that are kind of the core foundation of how I work with clients. I teach them the 5 steps. I teach them the skills and laws. And in this short presentation, I can't teach you everything, but I can introduce you to the concepts. We're also going to talk about mobilizing techniques so that you can help yourself and your client reconnect to your bigger essence. And I'm going to really go over protocols and some videos of demonstration videos of transforming anger and maladaptive patterns around the freeze and collapse and disassociative patterns. And we'll talk a little bit about developmental trauma and attachment work. So my 5 steps and skills and laws that I'll present are really about what Thich Nhat Hanh says in this quote: "You are what you want to become." So there is some people ask me, I always have a client, you know, every year a few clients ask me, but can I do it? Am I good enough? Will I be able to really love myself? Will I be able to heal this anxiety and depression? And then they're like, well, who am I really? And what I say to them is, who do you decide to be? You can use this formula, I call it the secret code formula, the 5-step skills and laws, to reconnect back to your wholeness throughout your day. Because of our biology, because of our brain, because of our energy system, we're going to lose ourselves. But if you have the steps and skills to reconnect back to who you really are, I mean, that's what it's really about. So Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "Who you are, what you want to become. Why search anymore? You are a wonderful manifestation. The whole universe has come together to make your existence possible. There is nothing that is not you. The kingdom of God, the pure land, nirvana, happiness, and liberation are all you." And yet your biology and your false self is not who you really are, but it can become that vehicle, that energetic awakening, that opening to transform the energy of your false self back to your true self. So is that something you might want to explore, might want to deepen into? Let's get started. So what feeds the false self? You know, there's an MRI imaging there of the brain. So I believe the ego, whether it's supporting you or fighting you, is very linked to the limbic system and the primal brain triggers. So if your brain is resonating in peace and comfort, your ego is going to feel much more comfortable. So in the work I teach, I never ask people to self-identify as, or do ego resourcing or self-identify as their ego. I really invite people to self-identify as their true essence and notice and track the ego. Notice when the ego is supporting them. Notice when the ego is holding them back. Really understand that the ego is influenced by your biological and energetic structure. If you can learn how to disidentify from the language, the thoughts, the beliefs of the ego and discover this true essence of who you are, you can then change the brain. You can use your higher mind, I call it, the high vibrational mind, to influence the brain and change it. Because the brain is not the mind, but the mind can change the brain. And that's kind of the essence of what I feel mindfulness work is about, especially if it's done through the body. So energetically, the auric field, and we'll show you some videos about the auric field and how it influences the false self. So your state of being, again, the vibration of the mind is very different. So if you're in this peaceful state of being, you can bring that frequency of the mind into the body and even heal cancer. We don't have much time to go into the logistics of that, but you can heal the anxiety. You can heal the anger, the false self, and the dysregulation. And we'll actually give you some protocols to play with. And then let's really talk about polyvagal theory, trauma and attachment theory. Your past and how your vagus nerve is balanced or not balanced, what trauma and attachment system you have developed in your biological structure, brain and body, determine to what extent your false self has a hold over you and can hold you down and hold you back in those negative beliefs and negative patterns, procedural memory, implicit learning, those old ways of being, lock in the false self. And yet there's resilience. You know, my story is I'm alive, but my brother became a drug addict and passed away. And from his developmental trauma, he did not turn it into a gift. But I've become resilient. And I've actually developed this whole program just so I could heal and help others heal. So I turned my trauma into a gift. And I as I always say, one of the laws, spiritual laws I teach is life happens for us, not to us. And we have to understand what lessons we can learn from that terrible thing that happened. In grad school, one of my professors talked about the diathesis stress model that includes what adds into resilience, biology, you know, DNA, I believe past life, the age of the soul, you know, obviously your parents, developmental trauma, your environment, all that adds into whether you're going to be resilient and how resilient you're going to be. I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I've really discovered that resilience is very linked to undeniable intention. If your intention and your passion and your longing is to heal, that really adds in. And we'll talk more about the energetics of that intention and how to help your clients come into that positive intention to move from the false self to the true essence of who they really are. Okay. So in the quantum reality, it awakens possibility. So in Newtonian physics, everything is solid. My hand is solid, or as Eckhart Tolle would say, everything is form. But in quantum reality, everything is particles of energy. Your false self just becomes particles of energy that can reform. But if your mind and your construct is, oh no, false self is true, I don't know who I am, how do I get from A to B? And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. If you have a client, one of the things that I often am asked is, my parents never mirrored my true essence back to me. How can I learn to mirror it to myself? And it is a process, it is a path, and yet, again, that intention and that ability to do that at deeper and deeper levels is quite magical. So I'm going to invite you to be open to move into the quantum reality during this presentation and say goodbye to the Newtonian reality where things are fixed and unchangeable. Let's take that further. So particles of energy, that quantum reality, can transform from low vibrational frequencies such as sadness, anxiety, loneliness, to higher vibrational reality, joy, power, creation. So I want to really invite you to, as we're doing the presentation, notice your body. Notice your energy system if you have that skill. Notice where you can feel tingles and flows, which are the physical representation of HVC, high vibrational consciousness. And notice that. Just notice it, because what you focus on grows. For during this presentation, little part of you listen to me and a part of you just feel the joy and the tingles of flows of what's happening energetically and somatically in your body. Because you will be cultivating HVC, high vibrational consciousness. And if there's enough high vibrational consciousness, and as you learn the skills and the steps to meet sadness, anxiety, loneliness, whatever low vibrational consciousness you have, in a certain manner, you can transform, move out of the Newtonian, the solid, into the formless, as Eckhart Tolle says, and transform LVC, low vibrational consciousness, to high vibrational consciousness. Oh no, there we go. So yes, I'm talking about the matrix. Matrix is a great metaphor for this work, for your own self-empowerment. It's really disempowered to self-identify as something that's not the true, deepest truth of who you are. And so in some ways, I'd like to think of this work as empowerment work. And I'd love to invite you to learn how to influence reality by transforming that false self to manifest your highest good. One of the spiritual laws I teach is your sense of self creates your reality. So if you're vibrating at your wounded, traumatized false self, you're going to create a lower vibrational reality than if you're vibrating at the higher essence of who you really are. So you can change how you feel and perceive those negative emotions, how you perceive yourself, and how you perceive the reality around you. Because how you feel determines if you heal. And how you feel is really about shifting the false self back to your core being, using those 5 skills, 5 steps, and 5 spiritual laws that they teach. So you've got high vibrational consciousness. If you have enough of it, you can transform the lower vibrational consciousness using the steps and skills they teach. And here's a video. So imagine the black paint represents fear, disassociation, false self, and the white paint is the true essence of who you are. As you add just a little bit of false self into the essence of who you are, truly are, the black turns to white. And so in the work with your clients, in the work with my clients, and this is a big issue, have you learned the skills and steps to teach them how to feel as an emotion and sensation in the body, their true essence? Have you taught them, we talk a lot about resourcing clients. Well, I'd like you to take away that there's a way you can help them feel as an emotion and sensation in the body, the true essence of who they really are. And from that, you can start transforming energy. You can start transforming sadness and fear and disassociation and collapse and that false self stuff that gets triggered by the limbic and the false self. So high vibrational energy of joy, wisdom, grace, compassion, self-love transforms that low vibrational consciousness. And it's different than process work. So I'm not asking clients to process what's happening to them. I'm asking them to experience their negative emotions and false self in a very particular way that keeps all the aliveness there instead of processing it. I don't like processed wheat, white bread. I want to keep the aliveness in it. And this process keeps more aliveness in your brain, body, mind, energy system so that you develop the resilience. You develop that self-mastery approach of, oh, this is me, this essence of white paint, true essence of who I am. I can feel it as an emotion and sensation in the body. And that metaphorical white paint can connect to when I have sad or negative looping thoughts or anxiety or whatever it is, even chronic illness, and transform it at that Newtonian, moving out of that Newtonian level into everything is made out of particles of energy, and I'm the CEO transforming LVC to HVC, and I'm in my brain and body systems, using the mind, using the steps and skills we'll review shortly. So let's first talk about the anatomy of the energy field. So I'm bringing in the energetic component, which I think is the next evolution of body-centered psychotherapy. I believe somatics is one level down from just cognitive therapy, down to the core of things. And the anatomy of the energy field is the blueprint that the somatics moves from, that the cognitive reacts to. So if you work with that lower, most subtle level, you can then connect the brain and the body and transform it versus process it. So what I'm saying is energy is the medium, the tangible. Yes, tangible. I teach people how to experience and then use it as a tangible tool. It's the glue that connects the mind with the body. It's that glue. And here's an example of, trauma in the energetic field being transformed from the false self to the true self. And you can learn how to sense it, see it, feel it in yourself and in a client. And you can actually track my secret, the 5-step skills and spiritual laws, that process that transforms the LVC, the lower frequencies, to the higher frequencies of the true self. You can track when the client freezes from that process. You can track when the client gets trapped in anger or hopelessness or despair or disassociation at a very subtle level. It really helps create that healthy attachment and relationship between you and the client. When you're like, well, let's just slow down now. I think you've disassociated. Or, wow, there's a freeze in you. Can you feel it? No, you're numb in the body. Okay. If you can track that, name that, help the client name it in themselves, have that self-mastery in themselves, and then self-regulate using the 5-step skills and spiritual laws around that. That really helps you track at much subtle levels, but it what it does is it creates a closer relationship between you and the client, because they feel seen. They feel held at such a subtle, deep level. It changes the whole attachment dynamics between you and your client. So is the map to freedom, or that secret code? It's based on 5-step skills and spiritual laws. And again, I've got handouts, so I'm just going to whip through this because I don't have a lot of time to present this material. So I'm going to give you handouts and things like that and go through it and invite you to, take any of my online certification trainings, or just simple online trainings, or in-person certification trainings that help you take this work much deeper within yourself, and if so, interested with clients. So spiritual law number 1 says your sense of self creates your awareness. So step 1 is noticing when you're in your false self and when you're in your wholeness. And the skill to do that is called the explorer's mind. So it's more like a detective. It's not the objective. It's kind of like the objective observer. It's more like that detective where, wow, what is really happening? I'm not linked to any outcome. Like, my sense of self is still okay if I say I'm in my false self and not my core being. It's the explorer's mind is that detective. It's just assessing. Step 1, are you in your essence of your true self or your false self? And then step 2, spiritual law 2 says you are not your emotional pain. It's just energy, that quantum. Everything's particles of energy. And step 2 is to individualize, differentiate from that emotional pain. The pain is energy. It's not a litmus test for my value. And then there's this energetic frequency. Barbara Brennan calls it the heart line. It's really this magnetic energy that runs through the center of the body. And I'll show you a video demonstrating it, that aligns you to be able to differentiate. It gives a powerful, more yang energy. In my day we called it yang, but yang energy to help you have the strength to say, this is not me and this is me. In fact, one of the protocols I first teach my clients is, 1, can you feel the sensation and emotion of your true essence, your core being, and can you differentiate? Can you practice saying, wow, where in my body is my false self and where is my body is my true self? And then self-identify as the true self. That's like, if you take no more protocols than that skill set to practice with yourself and then practice with your client, I really strongly recommend you first practice this on yourself before you present it to clients. And, I do supervision, and, there's other trainings to get support around this. But it's really powerful. And here's a video of the intention line. There's this magnet energy connecting heaven to earth through the center of the body that often gets broken with mixed intentions. Do I really want to own my personal power and connect to my core being and differentiate from that emotional pain and false self? And then it transforms using the steps and skills. And you can see the animation of the line reconnect. Isn't that beautiful? Cool. And so let's continue. So step 3, spiritual law 3, is your negative past repeats until you heal that false self that keeps it in place. And so step 3 is to name, own, and claim what's happening. Where in my body and energy system is that LVC, that false self, that negative belief or emotion? And then skill 3 is to choose to go into feeling it. And I'm very specific about the vibration that your mind and body needs to resonate at while you feel it. And we'll talk more about this later. Because if you feel it and you believe that negative emotion is you spread more black paint. You don't cultivate white pain. But if you are differentiated and individualized, this is another thing I'd love for you to practice. Can you practice feeling negative emotions in the body and see them as energy and kind of track whether your mind resonates at the pain as if it's who you really are versus just an energetic portal? And you're embodying that high vibrational mind to help you connect to the true essence of who you really are, the brilliance of your core being. So choosing to go into the pain in a very specific way. So another thing to take back again is how you feel determines if you heal. You have to find it. You can't be frozen, disassociated, or collapsed into the pain. But can you be in contact with it? Because you can't transform it if you're not feeling it. But if you're feeling it so deeply that it becomes your false self, your identity, then it can't transform fully. So difficulty happens for you, not to you, is spiritual law number 4. And I like to ask people to link it to the past, to understand how did this habituated pattern happen? And then the skill is called the enlightened observer. And it's not the objective observer because I assess the energy of the enlightened observer. It's really this higher frequency, this good enough mom energy coming in through the top of the head into the physical body that changes that quantum reality out of the Newtonian, that starts that transformation process of black paint to white paint. And then the last step, spiritual law, is pain is the energetic portal incarnating the wholeness. You do have a true essence that is your bigger self, your core being, and the false self can transform, and that's the step and skills for step 5 and skill 5 is the actual skill of that transformation back, so you self-identify as your core being. Let's talk more about how this is done and take it to the next step. So I call this the 3 rings of healing. You use the 5 steps and skills, and again, you have handouts on this, on how to move from the black ring of the defensive pain. It's the shell covering the meat. You think of walnut or acorn has that shell that covers the meat, and the meat is the blue ring. It's the actual emotional pain that keeps that false self in place. It's the wounding. I call it the core distortion. And then the center ring is the true essence of your true self, that core being. And throughout the day, we all move in and out of these cycles 1,000 times a day, 100 times a day. If you're really mindful, you'd be surprised how many times a day you spend in each of the 3 cycles, and it can be instant. So the 5 steps and skills teach you how to move through more consciously, healing the false self. And as you do it more, you have more white paint, more resourcing. This is what I call resourcing, how I resource a client. Again, using the practice of, okay, throughout the session, can you feel your true self as a sensation and emotion in the body? Then can you say, oh, this is me. And then, okay, maybe in my shoulder or my throat or my high heart, there's the false self and the emotion under that I transform. But as you do this enough, it becomes part of your procedural memory and implicit learning. You're doing 5 steps and skills throughout the day, transforming, coming back into your true essence, your core being, more and more. So that, these days, if it's not very stressful, I'm like tingling and flowing and vibrating at that higher frequency most of the day. And here's an example of, so the false self is held in, I use the Brennan system of the anatomy of the energy field. Your relationship to yourself is in the 2nd level of the energy field. And it's rainbow colored when you're really in your true self. So this is the energy of your second level of the auric energy field, your relationship to self. And this guy's got some darkness there, right? Because we do. Nobody has a perfect energy field. But as you learn how to move through those 3 rings of healing consciously, you awaken the true self in the energy system. So this is the second level of the auric field. The previous video of that brown energy to the higher frequencies that I showed earlier is the 4th level, relationship level. The attachment system is held there, and it influences the second level of the auric field. So the auric field has chakras, and the chakras are in the front as well as the back, but it also has 7 levels of the field. And unfortunately, I don't have time to go over all 7 levels, but we'll talk. The auric field has the chakra system, but it also has a level of the field of your relationship to self, and a 4th level of the field, relationship to others. And trauma presents on all these levels of the field. And here's a picture of the chakra system. They hook into a central channel through the center, and chakras are on the front as well as the back. You can learn how to meet that dark paint, that black paint that's held in the chakra system, and also your physical body, and transform it back to reconnect to your whole self. But if your energy system shrinks to the size of the trauma, so you see that circle with trauma in it, the black paint, if your energy shrinks and your sense of self becomes the trauma, you can't transform it. You can maybe process it, you can name what's happening. But wouldn't it be helpful to have some skills and tools to have your energy system develop that white paint so your energy system gets big and you can transform the trauma? So your false self is differentiated, individualized from the trauma. Again, learning how to feel right now where in your body you feel tingles and flows and the emotion of your true self vibrating, and where might there be some lower vibrational consciousness, some insecurity. Maybe some of you are thinking, tracking energy, that's too hard for me. Actually, it's the easiest thing I teach. We'll talk a little bit about that next, but tracking energy is the easiest thing I teach. The only thing that gets in the way is your false self. The hardest thing I teach is to self-identify as your true essence. Use that energy, that white paint, as a frequency to heal the false self, the trauma, the attachment system. All comes down to the brain and biology, ultimately. Rewiring your attachment system, creating high vagus tone, polyvagal theory, and that high dorsal tone is that more collapsed energy where you become the trauma. And high vagal tone is that secure attachment where you feel safe enough to self-identify as your true self. Again, I wish I had more time to talk about that, but let's understand that your attachment system, polyvagal theory, influences that false self so dramatically. And trauma influences the attachment system. There's a relationship between the two. So that's my puppy, Inca, on my 13-year-old black lab. And, the puppy had secure attachment. The puppy had this loving container to find her true self. Not all of us had that growing up. I know I didn't. Not all of us had that, but we can create that for ourselves when we move out of that Newtonian solid fixed relationship. So here's some skills. And again, I have a handout. You don't have to write this down, but I want you to kind of feel in your body and energy system that you can do this. You can feel your core being, your true self, as a sensation and emotion in the body. cultivating white pain. You can differentiate from those negative emotions, seeing them as energy and not a litmus test on value. And then to actually get the transformation skill, you have to learn how to hold two places at once. In the mind has to vibrate at that frequency of your core being as it comes into the body and feels the negative emotions. Again, you have to feel the negative emotion. You can't be frozen, disassociated, or collapsed around it. Using the 5 skill steps and spiritual laws that I teach. You have to learn how to be kind to your human. I say bekindtoyourhuman.com. Got some bumper stickers that, yeah, reach out to me if you want one. Everybody needs to be kind to their human because things happen for us, not to us. Understanding those spiritual laws is something bad. Like I'm going through a pretty rough time right now, actually the past year and a half. So much has happened and the structures of my current life completely fell apart, and it's that void where my new sense of self of who I really am is being challenged as the old structures destroy. And as I look at these terrible things that are happening, I have to understand what's the gift. If they're happening, they had to happen. Otherwise, I couldn't control it. Otherwise, I would have changed it. So how do I show up in these challenging times? Actually, there's a lot of challenging times in politics and everything happening now, actually. How can we find out how they're happening for us and not to us, and find that pain is that portal to incarnate more wholeness as you learn how, as you learn the ability to do that. So you can transform that pain to power. If you don't know how to feel emotional pain and the false self in a way that you can say, I can't wait to feel that negative thing because I know how to transform it. Let me and other people you know help you get that ability, that superpower ability to transform pain to power. Learn how to resonate that mind at that higher frequency so it can change the brain, change the biology. You know, go from high dorsal tone in polyvagal theory to high ventral tone, you know, make that happen. So what heals the false self energetically to influence the brain, state of being, attachment system, trauma? You know, having a good brain wiring so you're not habituated to collapse into depression, sadness, anger. Learning how to shift high dorsal tone in polyvagal theory to high ventral tone, how to shift trauma and your attachment system. And that secret code formula, those steps, skills, and spiritual laws really help you. Simply practicing feeling as an emotion and sensation and self-identifying as your core being and sending love and kindness to the parts in your brain and body system that aren't resonating, that helps you tremendously. Step 1, awareness helps you tremendously. But my system's pretty deep and profound. It gives you the map to freedom. In fact, my book's called The Map to Freedom. Explores Mind, The Map to Freedom. So let's talk more about specifics and take this into the clinical setting. Tracking subtle energy, being able to track when a client freezes or fights or collapses, or their attachment system triggers, not only through body sensations and facial cues, but actually reading the consciousness of the energy in the mind. In the upper right-hand corner is a picture of my students practicing an intervention. I have them sit on physio balls so that their core is engaged because that brings their energy system bigger, like that previous slide where if the trauma gets too big, you can't just identify and own your false self. So learning how to help your client keep their energy system bigger than the pain. I sometimes do hands-on work on tables. My students learn first on tables, and then they learn how to shift the energy through non-touch so that therapists feel empowered. They don't have to touch a client. In this practice in the upper right-hand And you can ask your client, you see the client has a hand on themselves, or, a gentle hand on the back if that feels comfortable to you. And she's tracking where the energy of their false self is held, and she's helping her work through those 5 steps and skills to transform it. So learning how to track where, when a client walks in, I can feel what the negative belief is, track that, see that, and know what's going to happen in the session just by looking at them. And that's a step and skill you can get. Listen to Aniva talk.
I think, in the somatic program and in the dance movement therapy program, we talk about energy a lot, but nobody really knows what they're talking about. It's like how in a body-based program you learn these rubrics for like how to analyze movement, but we're still talking about energy without having a rubric. And so, people say like, oh, I don't know, I just used my intuition, or, like the room just felt different, but they don't have the skills to know how they know what they know.
So you can get the skills at a much more subtle level. So you know that when the energy of the false self is in the throat, when that shifts and it moves down. So another really important thing to notice is a lot of times it'll start in the heart, but it can move down through the body, and you can track it and guide the client to track it themselves at much more subtle levels, much more sophisticated ways. I have yet to meet anybody that, if they have strong enough intention, hasn't learned how to track subtle energy, and have their client walk in and say, wow, I know it's first chakra stuff we're working on today, or what's going on in their throat chakra, and actually feel the emotion there before the client actually has accessed it themselves. That's the power I'm talking about with this more integrative approach, and why I think including these subtle energy skills and tracking abilities empowers you to create better relationships with the client, because you're tracking them more sophisticated. They feel held and supported so deeply when you're like, oh, okay, so I noticed something just happened in your energy field and you felt that emotional pain. And they're like, wow, she's really with me. She's really tracking me. I feel supported and guided in such a beautiful way. And here's a video in the lower left-hand corner of a client who had trouble feeling emotions in her body, let alone tracking emotions in another client. So I had her put her hands to feel anxiety. And there she is showing and demonstrating. The audio's not good on that, so I'm not doing that. And in that short time that they touched, and why I kissed her, is the anxiety went away that quickly. You can help a client, and we'll talk more about this in a bit, shift through that anxiety so quickly, even by them learning how to place their own hand if you don't feel comfortable placing your hand on them. And, the student that did that, she was so frozen in her body that she couldn't feel and track the energy in the client's body. So part of this process is learning how to track it in you and expanding that skill to include your client. So throughout a session, when I track a client's freeze response, I know their attachment system has been activated too. When their false self comes up, I know their attachment system. And so I give them a bunch of mobilizing techniques to not only their attachment system, their trauma's been triggered. And my definition for secure attachment is can you self-identify as your core being, your true self, and disidentify as your false self? Can you really claim and use your true self as a sensation, an emotion in the body, as your secure attachment? And from that, connect to others. So throughout a session, when I see a client freeze, I usually invite them to use one of the many mobilizing techniques. If you look at that picture of my assistant teacher, I trained him over many years, and now he's teaching with me. Looks like a gym. There's physio balls, there's BOSUs, there's all sorts of toys, we call them, to help activate sometimes the fight response. If you have a freeze response, sometimes the only way out of it is to find that fight response. And so you can watch this video of Mahadev doing different physical movements throughout it. Simply having the client stand. I mean, as I said, I have them all sit on physio balls and not on the couch, leaning against the wall, standing on a BOSU. And it's really not so much about getting on the BOSU or the uneven ground. It's about when you step down.
Yeah, so one way to test it is, can they balance on the ball?
When you step down, sorry, I didn't include that picture, your energy just drops. And so, even stand on one foot and then stand on the other foot for 10 seconds and then stand on the ground, you'll feel more grounded. So if you're on the BOSU, or there's a balance thing I'll show you, it helps you ground out of the freeze. And it can be done in 5 seconds. And instead of leading them deeper into their emotional pain or trying to get them to connect when they're frozen to their bigger essence, you can just have them stand on a BOSU for 5 seconds, come to the ground, and they're out of the freeze that quickly. And these are skills they can do at home on their own.
Yeah, so one way to test it is, can they balance on the ball?
And so he's testing the emotion of whether I'm going to hire him to be an
apparently
assistant
I can
teacher.
get that new job.
Just say, I can get that.
I can get that new job. I can get that new job.
And whether his brain and body system can get that new job. And if that's too difficult, just simply sitting on a ball and raising your foot can test, I can get that new job, or I am enough is what I'm saying in that. And going on the balance thing. And again, it's not about being on the balance thing. It's when you step out, your energy drops, you ground, you move out of the freeze so quickly. And if you can track your client on the freeze, and you can use this, you can buy this at Amazon. I bought it at Amazon. If you can track when a client freezes and say, hey, honey, I see your energy system in your body froze. Let's do this mobilizing. They feel so supported and comforted. And then when you get off, you feel the ground. And if that's too hard, you can stand on another uneven, I've got some people who have physical issues, so they can't do the harder things, but there are easier things that they can do to activate. So those are the toys. We've got really quick and easy ways to help change that energy system, develop more white paint to transform the black paint. So sometimes a client is so frozen and, disassociated that or collapsed, honestly. This is good for the collapse. You need to activate their fight response. So having them push against you, and I'm playing her mom, and she's pushing and finding her strength and learning to say no to mom. We don't actually push negative energy at people because energy is real, but she's trying to activate, no, mom, no. And here's another way to activate the fight response and feel anger in the lower body.
So I start here, and I ask them to come on, if they have the physical ability to come on their toes, because it goes quicker if you're on your toes. And then I want you to breathe in and breathe out. And imagine you're feeling the anger, and you're like, I'm powerful, and you're puny.
So that's activating the attachment system. As a kid, the parents seem so big. So I actually asked them to shrink in their mind their parents so that they feel bigger than the parent. And that helps them come out of the freeze. And so this is Mahadev again, my assistant teacher, and he's got, I make a lot of cuts in this because I don't want to touch the subject material too specifically. Let's just say he's working anger at women, and he's collapsed and frozen and disassociated. He goes through all three of these. And what's so cool, if you can track that at such subtle levels. And at one point, I asked him, why is he angry? And it's not like he told me he was angry, but because I could say, you're angry, I was able to get the subject material out of him and see what this was really about. So if you can ask that right question, say, why are you angry? It can shift everything. Tracking that subtle energy is so much easier. I just want you to know that it's so much easier. And there's that picture in the upper right-hand corner of that child collapsed. And if you work with any of the 5 body-centered character structures that they work with in like core energetics or Hakomi, I teach the 5 character structures, but what is traditionally considered the oral character structure, I call it the compassionate, was that collapsed energy of they cried, they cried, they cried, nobody came to pick them up, and so they just collapsed. And that is a habituated response in their attachment system, in their polyvagal theory, in their false self. So helping a client move out of collapse using sometimes mobilizing, you'll see I ask him to look me in the eye and just to receive. His attachment style tends to be avoidant. So him, and we have a long-term relationship. He's been working with me 5 years, so I push him a little bit in this, that if it were a new relationship, I would do mostly resourcing. It's safe, mobilizing. I wouldn't push him this much, but he's been working this issue and been stuck on it for a while. So here, let's watch.
So I want you to be in your intention line. And we're going to connect to your bigger self. I'm going to ask you to stay in contact with me. Okay. So, what's the anger? You eyes and just look at me.
Notice I asked, what's the anger? We spent some time there. I just didn't have time to show you.
Can you be detached from that and see it as energy?
Asking him to be in that continuity, individualized, differentiated. He's collapsed into it. He goes in and out of frozenness.
And so I want to go back, and I'm going to have a strong boundary with you. The only one that abandons you is you. It's not about the women. It's about you. So I'm really going to, before I let you work that piece, but there's a way you get lost in it. And so I want you to take self-responsibility. We're not going back to past lives. We're just dealing with this timeline. Because you're not going to abandon you. And you'll find how to turn that into a gift. Or you can recycle it and stay wounded and hate women. There you go.
He just shifts his energy. Like you can.
So there's a choice point, right? You can go back to that.
Step 3 is
relive that probably a million more times. Or it's a new year. It's not really about women anymore. It's that self-responsibility piece that so sucks, right? Like, oh, well, things happen for me, not to me. Gosh darn it, I have to really look at how this wound is your portal to incarnate in that bigger self, to heal that attachment issue.
So he does some mobilizing techniques, and you can tell he's not frozen. even in his body, but you can also feel in his energy system, he's not frozen anymore. And he's like, ends it with, I got this. I got this. And so where he's at, I would resource him probably about 15 more minutes to really embody it. He's got this, but there's still, for my liking, to end a session, I always like a lot more white paint, a lot more embodiment of the higher frequencies. And his mind is resonating at a higher frequency, but I want it to be in the body, bringing in a lot more higher frequencies of that core being. So we stayed and resourced him for a bit until he was like really fully back. So let's talk a little bit about doing anger work. I do it very differently than a lot of body-centered programs do. For one thing, I don't ever have somebody push anger at an imaginary person, like push, because energy is real. I ask them to own and transform the anger in their physical body so they heal the false self and feel more power, more of that yang, yin, yang energy, yang energy, more of that power within them. So in anger interventions, I assess whether they're charging the anger, discharging the anger, like releasing anger, or actually transforming the anger. And the difference between charging the anger, which you don't want to do because it creates more neural pathways of that false self. You want to access anger. The anger work I teach, and I wish I had more time to go into this, but fundamentally, the anger work I teach, you assess and access the anger and then transform it. You may have to discharge it. In the video I'm going to show you, the first example is of him charging it and trying to discharge it, and that's when his sense of self is enmeshed or merging energetically with the anger, so there's no differentiation. And the second one where he's accessing the anger and transforming it in the video I'll show you. And I never let anybody hit more than 10 times because they have to, one, have the intention of what is this anger, what is the consciousness of the anger, like I hate politics or I hate mom, and you're transforming it to like the positive opposite might be I'm empowered to deal with mom in a healthy way or to embody my secure attachment. So you always want to name the negative and know what you're transforming it to, because I'm going to assess their energy field and their mind, energy, body systems to determine whether transformation happened or if they just just felt it. There's a difference between feeling and transforming. And just a couple other notes on anger. I want to get in as much information as I can. For some people, it's easier for them to feel anger than sadness. So kind of check inside. Are you somebody that can go to sadness quicker or anger quicker? Me, sadness. So I've had to develop the skill. Some clients are going to have to teach the skill to actually feel anger and transform it. And then sometimes if they're doing deep trauma and attachment work, the anger will come in and then the sadness, and then the anger and then the sadness. So being able to track it at that subtle level and guide them through it so they're not charging or collapsing into anger or sadness is really key. Let's watch the video. Here's him charging anger. And you see how he's just like, I'm angry. And then I want you to, and then I ask him to like feel that as a sensation in the body. So now he can transform it. He can feel anger, not quite in his pelvis. It's still a little bit too high. And energetically, there's, okay, he just shifts the block in the heart piece, maybe. And now he's down into his first chakra and his lower body. That quickly. So I'm tracking the energy as quickly as I can. But you can learn how to do that too, guys. I'm just telling you. So now if you look at his field, there's still a tad in the heart. I'd probably have him go back into that, and maybe there's some crying, but most of the anger, he's in his pelvis, he's in his lower body energetically, and there's no freeze. There's a little, I call it a core distortion or false self in the heart that I'd go back to. So when you can track the energy that way, you're really creating a nice relationship as you help them start assessing their own field at such subtle levels and going back in for anything that might still need more love and support. Does that make sense? So again, anxiety can shift in just by teaching your client how to put their hand on their belly. Anxiety usually starts in the heart, and then it goes down to the third chakra or the stomach. And then eventually, if you can feel the anxiety in the pelvis area, that's when you can really embody a lot of power. When you shift that, anxiety just becomes raw fear, almost existential fear, when it drops down to the pelvis. So tracking where anxiety is in your client's body, helping them transform it. If it starts in the heart and then drops to the stomach, can you help them feel that if they can't track it themselves? And then ultimately, if you can feel the fear, it becomes existential terror, which is so fun to feel if they're empowered on, wow, that's not me. That's just the construct of the human condition. Let me transform that. So anxiety ends up being a gift. Anger transforms to power. Anxiety transforms to positive action. Sadness transforms to joy. So understanding that quantum level of how these negative emotions can transform is huge, because how you feel determines if you heal. This is when pain becomes a portal back to wholeness, wisdom, and freedom. So I want to do a really quick energy exercise. So I want you to put your hand on your knee, because knees always are dense in their energy. And I want you to imagine the energy from your hand going into the knee, and see if you can feel a change in the knee. You may feel heat or tingles and flows as you do that. And then I want you to put your mind in the knee. And for the replay of this, you can slow it down and take your time. But I'm going to push through this because we're running out of time. So then you can bring your mind, your high vibrational mind, into the knee and send love to that part of you and just say, oh, I love you, and have that energy in your head, the mind, meet the energy in the hand. Do that now. And so what happens is the energy should expand. If it doesn't expand, it means the mind's resonating at the place of pain instead of the place of core being. Let's do that again. Have your hand on your knee. Let the energy from your hands go into the knee. Notice the sensation and emotion change. Add that white paint high vibrational mind of unconditional love. Have your mind meet the energy in your hand, and notice it expand more. So what if you could track this in your client at such subtler and more sophisticated levels? How would that change your relationship to yourself and to your work and to your life? And I'm not going to ask you to do it, but in the trainings, I give you an example of, can you put your hand on your other knee and instead send hate into that, and notice how that changes the energy. So if your mind is resonating at the place of black paint, you create more black paint, because what you focus on grows. Don't do that. All right. So this is a ship, and I feel that, you know, if a ship is just 1 degree off course in their false self, you know, in a day they're going to be miles off course. And I feel like emotional pain is that energetic portal that puts our metaphorical ship back on course. Um, and that portal can incarnate more of your spiritual wholeness into physical form. Or as I say, be kind to your human.com. And we see these angels smoking. We're both, right? We have that false self, and yet we have that true self. And I call it energetic weightlifting. In the beginning, you can only transform a little bit of that emotional pain, LVC, sadness. And then as your skills advance, your false self becomes that loving vehicle. I do a lot of work with horses, and I had this one amazing event horse that would jump these huge jumps cross country, and he would hunt for the next jump because he had so much fun jumping through the obstacle. And as you get the skills and steps to track, you know, your mind, energy, body systems at deeper levels, you also get the skills and steps to want to look for that next obstacle, that negative belief, that false self, and transform it back to wholeness. I took this picture of a tree in Zimbabwe, Africa, where I lived for a period of time. And the tree only blooms during drought. And I think sometimes as we get the steps and skills, those periods of drought, which I'm in right now, can be that transformative ability to bloom. So let you remember this picture. And remember that if there's a drought in your life, it's the opportunity to bloom so much deeper. And I'd love to invite you to join any of my online or in-person trainings. I have a certification training starting really soon. It's once a month for 2.5 days. So people fly into my healing center and attend it on a weekend once a month for 12 months. It's a year-long certification training. And this is where it's located, my home and healing center, in the foothills of Boulder, Colorado. It's just beautiful there. It's a meditative retreat once a month. It's just brilliant. And I'd love to talk to you about it. We don't have a lot of time now, but please reach out to me, and I'd like to schedule in-person talking. And on November 16 to 18, there's a sample workshop you can attend to get a sense of it. It's traumacoaches.com/workshop where you can register. It's discounted right now for you at $97 instead of $147. So if you sign up before Monday, you can have that discount rate. I'm going to change the price on Monday. And I'd love for you to have a free online training at traumacoaches.com/free video. It's a video training. I'd love to get to know you and get to know what your challenges are and what support you need. I really am obviously passionate about this more integrative mind, energy, body approach. This is about my certification training. If you sign up again before Monday, you get a $300 discount. I haven't changed the price yet. Even though it says October 28th, I haven't changed it until Monday. Just holding it off for all of you. And I'm around to talk to about this and see if it's the right fit. I am a bit picky. I need people who are serious about willing to learn how to lean into the emotional pain and transform it, that want that self-mastery skill, and that want to believe in yourself, want to connect to your brilliance. Again, it's traumacoaches.com/true self certification. Traumacoaches.com/true self certification. And if you don't want to come every month, I have an online level 1 certification. The details are here. You could either do the online level 1 certification that in June you come to the foothills. It's beautiful for 4 days to have that certification finalized, or you can just do the online part without the certification. You get about 40 videos, you get access to me, you get monthly group calls, get a Facebook group. It's really profound, it's deep, it's exciting, it's awakening. Anyways, again, I'm Carolyn Eberly. I'm founder of the Mind Energy Body School of Transformation. I'm looking forward to being with you. These are the graduates of my recent program. And I always end my talks with this video. And I found out Rick Hansen does the same thing, so I feel I'm in good company. This is a whale that had a net trapped, holding her underwater, preventing her from breathing. And then a group of people cut the net from her so she could fly and bounce back and breathe. She went around and personally thanked each of the divers that helped her undo the net. And I feel like we're here to help each other undo the net. We are tribal in a good way, biologically tuned to support each other. And we can choose to open our tribe and be kind and supportive and help each other heal our attachment system and accept and grow and change to magnificent beings of our true self, healing with ourselves. So as we spend time together, either online or in person, I really look forward to being in contact with you and supporting each other on our journey. Sending you many blessings and so much love.